Emergency protocols tore Daniel Reed from the deepest sleep humanity had ever known. His cryopod hissed open and frigid air burned his lungs as consciousness returned in painful waves. 847 years had passed since Earth sent the colony ship Horizon's Promise into the unknown. The automated systems chose him first because his engineering background might save whatever remained of their mission. Daniel stumbled from the pod and collapsed onto cold metal flooring. His muscles screamed in protest after centuries of stillness. The ship's AI spoke through overhead speakers with calm precision. Navigation failure detected. Stellar coordinates do not match any known reference points. Initiating emergency revival sequence for essential personnel. 3 more pods opened in rapid succession. Amy Brooks gasped awake first. The ship's chief medical officer fought through disorientation with professional focus. Raj Patel followed, his hands already reaching for non-existent data terminals before his eyes fully opened. Kate Wilson emerged last. The former security contractor's instincts kicked in immediately as she scanned their surroundings for threats. "Where are we?" Amy managed between ragged breaths. Her medical training pushed through the fog of cryo sickness. Daniel pulled himself upright using a support rail. His legs trembled but held. "I don't know. The AI says we're lost." He moved toward the nearest console and called up their sensor readings. What he saw made no sense. The star charts displayed patterns completely alien to anything in their database. Raj joined him at the terminal. His fingers flew across the controls with increasing urgency. "This is impossible. These constellations don't exist in our records. It's like the entire galaxy rearranged itself." He pulled up radio frequency scans and froze. "Daniel, we're picking up transmissions, thousands of them, all artificial." The 4 colonists exchanged glances that mixed hope with dread. They had left Earth searching for a new home among empty stars. Instead, they had awakened to find the galaxy teeming with voices that were decidedly not human. Kate moved to the weapons locker by habit, found it sealed by safety protocols. "We need to know what we're dealing with. Amy, how many others can we safely revive right now?" 3 or 4 more without overwhelming medical resources." Amy was already moving toward the cryo bay. "Control station, but we should understand our situation before we wake the entire colony." Daniel agreed. He tasked the AI with translating the alien transmissions while they assessed their ship's condition. The Horizon's Promise had survived its journey, but showed signs of significant system degradation. Power reserves sat at 60%. Engines functioned but required maintenance. Weapons systems remained offline as designed for a peaceful colonization mission. Hours passed as they worked. Raj managed to decode enough of the transmissions to piece together a horrifying picture. An organization called the Dominion controlled vast regions of space. Their broadcasts spoke of resource allocation, population management, compliance enforcement. The language differed, but the tone remained universal. These were not requests, but commands. "They've built an empire," Raj said quietly. 12 species form something called the Council. They regulate everything, technology, expansion, even what other species can research. Amy looked up from her medical station, where she had been reviewing cryopod diagnostics. "How long has this been going on?" "Based on their historical references, at least 600 years. Raj pulled up more data. "They maintain what they call perfect order, no conflicts, no competition, no chaos. They've created a galaxy-wide dictatorship and convinced themselves it's paradise." An alarm cut through their discussion. Proximity sensors detected an approaching vessel. It moved with the confidence of authority, broadcasting Dominion identification codes and a clear message: "Prepare for boarding inspection." Daniel felt his stomach drop. Humanity had slept through the rise of an interstellar empire. Now they would face first contact not as explorers, but as potential subjects of a regime they never agreed to join. The alien ship docked without requesting permission. It simply overrode their airlock controls and attached itself to their hull. Daniel ordered everyone to the main corridor. They would meet their visitors standing, not cowering. The airlock opened, and Commander Talvin stepped through. The insectoid being stood nearly 7 feet tall. Its chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's lighting. Multiple arms carried devices that scanned the humans with clinical detachment. 4 eyes studied them with something between curiosity and dismissal. "You are unregistered." Talvin's voice came through a translation device that rendered the aliens' clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless speech. "This vessel lacks proper authorization. Your species does not appear in Dominion records. You will submit to classification and relocation." Daniel stepped forward, kept his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. "We're human from Earth. We left our homeworld before your Dominion existed. We claim no territory. We only seek to understand our situation." Talvin's antenna twitched in what might have been amusement or irritation. "Your intentions are irrelevant. All sapient species fall under Dominion authority. You will be evaluated, assigned a classification, and relocated to an appropriate habitat zone. Resistance is not permitted." Kate's jaw clenched, but she remained silent. Amy moved closer to Daniel in a show of solidarity. Raj continued recording everything through his handheld terminal. "And if we refuse?" Daniel asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it spoken. "Refusal is classified as rebellion." Talvin gestured, and 2 more aliens entered from the airlock. They carried devices that hummed with barely contained energy. "The penalty is destruction. The last species to resist the Dominion was the Brelics. They do not exist anymore. Their worlds are monuments to the cost of defiance." The commander moved through their ship with proprietary ease, scanning systems, accessing databases, treating the Horizon's promise like Dominion property already. Talvin paused at a biological scanner, its eyes widening slightly as data streamed across the device. "Interesting." The alien's tone shifted to something approaching concern. "Your homeworld classification: high-gravity death world, extreme environmental variance, abundant predatory species." Talvin looked at the humans with new assessment. "This changes your evaluation priority. Specialists will be sent. You will remain here under observation until they arrive." The boarding party departed as quickly as they came, leaving behind a beacon that monitored the human ship. Daniel and his crew stood in silence for a long moment after the airlock sealed. "What just happened?" Amy finally asked. Raj checked his terminal, his face pale. "They scanned our biology, our planet's data. Earth is classified as something called a death world. Apparently that means something significant to them." Daniel moved to a viewport and stared at unfamiliar stars. They had awakened hoping to build a new home. Instead, they found themselves classified, cataloged, and claimed by an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 6 centuries. Kate joined him at the window. "So what do we do?" Daniel thought about the thousands of colonists still sleeping in cryopods, about the dream of freedom that had sent them into the stars, about Commander Talvin's casual mention of an extinct species that had dared to resist. "We survive," he said finally. "And we figure out what it means that we're from a death world, because I think that might be the only advantage we have." 12 days of tense waiting had transformed the Horizon's promise from a sleeping colony ship into a hub of desperate activity. Daniel had authorized the revival of 46 more colonists, each one chosen for skills that might prove vital in the coming crisis. The ship hummed with purpose as engineers assessed their capabilities and scientists studied everything they could learn about the Dominion. Carlos Rivera hunched over a makeshift workstation in the engineering bay, his fingers dancing across holographic displays as he cataloged their technology. "We've got fabrication systems they don't have," he reported to Daniel during their daily briefing. "Our AI is more advanced, our power generation more efficient. We focused on survival and adaptation. They focused on control and standardization." Lynn Harper, the astrophysicist who had spent her career studying impossible problems, looked up from her analysis of the observation beacon. "I've been monitoring their communications through the device they left behind. The Dominion hasn't innovated in centuries. They've achieved stability by preventing change. Any species that develops new technology without permission gets classified as a threat. Daniel absorbed this information while watching Amy conduct medical examinations on newly revived colonists. Each person awakened to news that shattered their expectations. Earth was lost to time. The galaxy they had hoped to explore was instead a prison ruled by species they had never imagined. Raj burst into the briefing room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. "I found something. I managed to hack deeper into their network. There are resistance groups, small, scattered, but they exist." He projected data onto the central display. The Yevrin, an aquatic species. They've been fighting the Dominion for 80 years, mostly sabotage. Information warfare, nothing that succeeds, but they haven't given up. "Can we contact them?" Kate asked. She had been training security teams in the cargo bay, preparing for possibilities none of them wanted to consider. "Already did," Raj grinned. "Use the beacon's own communication system. They're cautious but interested. Their leader, someone named Kelly's, wants to establish a dialogue. They've never encountered a Deathworld species before." Before Daniel could respond, proximity alarms shrieked through the ship. The sensors showed 20 vessels emerging from hyperspace. These were not patrol ships but warships, and at their center, a massive command cruiser that dwarfed the horizon's promise. "The specialists have arrived," Amy said quietly. Administrator Voral materialized in their main corridor without using the airlock. The Solvari's energy form coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape that flickered with internal light. Daniel had read about species that existed as conscious energy, but seeing one felt like watching physics break its own rules. "I am Voral, Dominion Administrator for Xenobiological Assessment." The being's voice resonated directly in their minds rather than through air. "Your species presents unique classification challenges. I will conduct comprehensive evaluation. Resistance will be noted and factored into final determination." Daniel stepped forward, surrounded by his crew. "We're willing to cooperate with reasonable requests, but we won't surrender our autonomy based on classifications we never agreed to." Voral's form pulsed with colors that might have been amusement. "Autonomy is not a choice under Dominion law. It is a privilege granted to species that prove themselves non-threatening. Your cooperation determines only how comfortable your transition to proper status will be." Over the following week, Voral's scientific team conducted exhaustive studies. They tested human physiology, cognitive abilities, emotional responses, social structures. The aliens approached their work with the detachment of researchers cataloging insects. Their clinical precision made the humans feel like specimens rather than people. But the results clearly unsettled the Dominion scientists. Amy watched their reactions during medical scans, saw how they recoiled when human immune systems adapted to introduced pathogens within hours, heard their alarmed discussions when human volunteers demonstrated problem-solving abilities that outpaced their expectations. One evening, Daniel found Voral studying data in what had been the ship's observation lounge. The energy being seemed almost contemplative. "Your people confuse the established order," Voral said without preamble. "Deathworld species should not achieve technological sophistication. The environmental pressures that forge such adaptability typically prevent the stability necessary for civilization." "Maybe that's your mistake," Daniel replied. "Assuming that order and progress are the same thing, humanity advanced because we had to, because our world tried to kill us and we refused to die quietly." "Indeed," Voral's form shifted through several colors. "Your homeworld records are extraordinary: geological instability, extreme weather, predatory ecosystems, regular extinction events. Most species would not survive their own evolution on such a planet. Yet humans thrived, built cities, reached for stars." "What will happen to us?" Daniel asked directly. The administrator seemed to consider carefully. "The council convenes tomorrow. They will review my findings. 3 options exist: integration under strict monitoring, containment in designated zones, or elimination as a threat to galactic stability." Vorel paused. I have submitted my recommendation, but I am only one voice. Daniel felt ice in his veins. And what did you recommend? That is not for you to know, Vorel began to dissipate. Prepare your people, the decision will be final and immediate. Carlos found Daniel hours later in the engine room, staring at systems he had helped maintain during the long voyage from Earth. I intercepted their quantum transmission, the engineer said quietly. The council is voting right now. I couldn't decode everything, but I caught enough. He handed Daniel a data pad. They're leaning toward elimination. We possess too many dangerous qualities: adaptability, aggression, innovation. They fear one Deathworld species could destabilize 600 years of imposed peace. Daniel read the partial transcript, saw his species reduced to threat assessments and risk calculations, saw the cold, bureaucratic language that described human extinction as necessary containment. How long do we have? Vorel received orders an hour ago. Maintain. Observation while a fleet assembles, 48 hours until what they call a containment operation begins. Carlos's voice remained steady, but his hands shook. They're going to kill us, Daniel, all of us, and then they'll hunt down Earth and finish the job. Daniel thought about the 2,000 colonists still sleeping, about the dream that had sent them into space, about Amy's determination and Kate's courage and Raj's brilliance. He thought about Earth, about humanity's long struggle to survive against impossible odds, about every generation that had faced extinction and chosen to fight. Wake everyone, he said. Everyone, I don't care about medical protocols or resource management, wake them all. He met Carlos's eyes. The Dominion thinks we're a threat that needs eliminating. They're about to find out they were right, but not in the way they expected. Kate appeared in the doorway, her face grim. Vorel just informed me that we're confined to the ship. His forces have taken defensive positions around us. We're prisoners waiting for execution. Then we have 2 days to stop being prisoners, Daniel said, and start being what Earth made us, survivors who don't accept death quietly. Amy joined them, followed by Raj and Lynn and a dozen other newly awakened colonists. They gathered in the engine room, surrounded by technology that represented humanity's hope for a future among the stars. The Dominion ruled the galaxy for 6 centuries, Daniel told them. They achieved perfect order by crushing anyone who threatened that order. They're about to crush us. He paused. Unless we show them what happens when you corner a Deathworld species, when you threaten not just individuals but an entire people, when you force humans to choose between submission and survival. What's the plan? Kate asked. Daniel looked at his crew, saw fear and anger and determination in equal measure. We run, we hide, we survive, and then we make sure the Dominion regrets teaching us that their perfect order has no room for freedom. Every colonist now stood awake. 2,000 souls gathered in the main hangar bay as Daniel explained their situation. No comforting lies, no false hope, just the brutal truth that an alien empire had decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. Some people wept, others raged, but most simply listened with the quiet determination that had carried their ancestors through ice ages and plagues and wars. We have one chance. Carlos projected holographic schematics above the crowd. The Horizon's promise has an experimental jump drive. We never tested it, too risky, but it could theoretically open a wormhole to anywhere in the galaxy. He paused. Survival rate is maybe 50%, but staying here guarantees 0. Lynn stepped forward, her astrophysics expertise suddenly vital. I've calculated coordinates for a system the Dominion classifies as a dead zone, unstable radiation, hostile environment, uninhabitable by their standards. She smiled grimly. But Deathworld species have different standards. A young woman named Sophie raised her hand, her voice shaking but clear. What about the people helping us? Raj said there were resistance groups. Won't the Dominion punish them for our escape? Raj nodded slowly, acknowledging the weight of that question. Kellys and the Yevran are creating diversions across 40 systems. They know the cost. They're doing it anyway. They said freedom is worth the sacrifice. Daniel watched his people process this, saw them understand that aliens they had never met were willing to die so humanity might survive. It was a debt that could never be repaid, only honored. Kate's security teams had been busy. We have 36 hours before the Dominion fleet arrives. I've rigged our database to self-destruct. They won't get our technology or history. Everything essential is backed up on quantum storage that jumps with us. One of Voral's observers, a Carthian named Silic, approached Daniel privately during the preparations. The insectoid being's mandibles clicked nervously. "I wish to join your escape," she said through her translator. "I have watched your people. You possess something the Dominion destroyed in my species, the courage to choose your own path." Daniel studied her, saw genuine conviction in her multifaceted eyes. "You understand we might die in the jump, that even if we survive, the Dominion will hunt us." "I understand that living in a cage is not living," Silic replied. "My people forgot that, but I remember now because you remembered it for us." The hours blurred together, engineers modifying the jump drive, medical teams preparing for casualties, families saying goodbye to certainty and hello to chaos. Raj maintained contact with Kelly's, coordinating timing for maximum confusion. Voral noticed the increased activity. Confronted Daniel in the command center. "You are planning something foolish." The administrator's energy form flickered with colors Daniel had learned meant concern. "The Council's decision is final. Resistance only adds suffering to inevitability." "Then watch us suffer," Daniel said. "Because humans don't surrender, we adapt, we survive, we fight. Your perfect order has no category for that, which is exactly why you're afraid of us." The administrator studied him, colors shifting through patterns Daniel couldn't interpret. "I have observed many species over my existence. Most accept their role in the Dominion, embrace the security of ordered life. A few resist briefly, then submit." Voral moved closer. "But you humans, you would rather die free than live as subjects. This makes you either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." "Maybe both," Amy interjected, joining them, "but it's our choice to make." With 12 hours remaining, the resistance uprisings began, across 40 star systems. Yevran saboteurs struck water processing facilities, other species jammed communications, destroyed supply depots, created chaos on a scale the Dominion hadn't experienced in centuries. Voral received emergency transmissions, watched his ordered galaxy descend into unprecedented disorder. "This is your doing," the administrator said, not with anger but with something like wonder. "You inspired this. Species that accepted their place for generations suddenly remember they have voices." "Freedom is contagious," Daniel replied. "Once you see someone else choose it, you remember you can choose it too." The jump drive hummed to life, its power signature impossible to hide. Dominion sensors detected the energy buildup immediately. Voral's military escort moved into attack positions, plasma weapons charging. Daniel initiated the final sequence, his hands steady on controls designed for a journey they had never dared attempt. "This is for everyone who forgot they could say no," he transmitted on open channels. "For every species that traded liberty for security and lost both. For the Yevran and everyone fighting out there, we're leaving, but we'll be back." Voral's form blazed with urgent colors. "The Orvax enforcers are here. They will destroy you before you complete the jump. Please, stop this." Space tore open in front of the Horizon's promise, reality splitting like fabric under impossible strain. Alarms shrieked. As the ship began moving toward the unstable wormhole, Dominion vessels opened fire, but their weapons bent around the gravitational distortions. Then the psychic assault hit. 3 Orvax enforcers combined their mental powers, crushing pressure that demanded submission, obedience, surrender. Colonists throughout the ship screamed as alien thoughts invaded their minds. But Amy had prepared for this. Her medical teams administered neurological stabilizers, and something else happened. Something the Orvax hadn't expected. Human brains, evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them, possessed natural resistance to external control. Fear was not new to humanity. Pressure was not foreign. Humans had faced extinction before and survived through sheer stubborn will. "Push through it," Daniel shouted over shipwide communications, his own head feeling like it might split apart. "They're trying to make us afraid, but we're the species that hunted mammoths, that crossed oceans in wooden boats, that split the atom and touched the moon. Fear doesn't stop us, it focuses us." Carlos maintained engine control despite the psychic barrage. Lynn completed final calculations even as the Orvax tried to shut down her thoughts. Kate's teams held their posts, every human aboard fighting through mental assault with determination forged across millennia of survival. The Horizon's promise plunged into the wormhole. Dominion weapons fire passed through the closing portal. The ship tumbled through impossible geometries. Hull groaning under stresses it was never designed to endure. Artificial gravity failed. Emergency bulkheads sealed breaches. Systems failed in cascading waves. Silix, strapped into a crash seat beside Daniel, clicked in what might have been laughter or terror. "Your species is insane." "Completely," Daniel agreed as the ship shook itself apart around them. "But we're free." The wormhole spat them out in a binary star system bathed in radiation that would kill most Dominion species within hours. Alarms continued screaming. Damage reports flooded in. 30% of their systems offline. Hull integrity at 60%. But they were alive. They were together. And they were beyond the Dominion's immediate reach. Amy's voice came over communications, strained but steady. "We have casualties, nothing critical. The cryopods protected most people, medical teams responding." Raj pulled up sensor data, his hands shaking from the psychic assault's lingering effects. "We made it. We're in the dead zone. Dominion tracking us, but their ships can't operate in this radiation without extensive shielding modifications." Daniel looked at the binary stars burning outside their damaged ship, thought about the Yevrin fighting and dying across 40 systems, about Voral watching humans choose death over submission, about 2,000 colonists who had trusted him with their lives. Kate appeared on the command deck, blood trickling from her nose, a common effect of the Orvax assault. "What now, boss?" Daniel studied the readings, saw asteroids rich with raw materials, saw a hostile environment that would kill most species but only inconvenience humans, saw possibility where the Dominion saw only wasteland. "Now we build," he said. "We build a place where freedom isn't forbidden, where choice matters more than order, where humans and anyone else who wants liberty can stand together." He met the eyes of his exhausted, battered, unbroken crew. "The Dominion ruled the galaxy for 600 years. They're about to learn what happens when you wake the Deathworld species, when you force humanity to choose between extinction and rebellion. They wanted us gone. Instead, they created their worst nightmare. Humans with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." 4 months into their exile, the dead zone had transformed from a refuge into a foundation. Daniel floated through the skeletal framework of what would become Sanctuary Station, watching construction crews work in environment suits among the asteroids. The radiation that made this system uninhabitable for most species barely registered as an inconvenience to humans once Amy's medical teams developed proper protocols. "We're ahead of schedule," Carlos reported through comm channels. His engineering teams had converted mining equipment into construction tools. "Station core will be pressurized in 3 weeks, full life support in 6, defensive systems in 8. The population had grown beyond the original colonists. Refugee ships arrived weekly, fleeing Dominion persecution or simply seeking the freedom that Sanctuary represented. Yevrin survivors came first, Kelly's among them. The aquatic being species had paid dearly for their coordinated uprising, but 50 of them survived to join humanity's rebellion. Then came the Carthene, Silix's presence aboard. The Horizon's promise had inspired others of her kind. 2 colony ships full of refugees who chose uncertainty over servitude. Their natural radiation resistance made them invaluable in construction efforts. A Nalvari deserter named Riven arrived 3 weeks ago. His reptilian features still showed fear when he spoke about witnessing Dominion execute his entire crew for questioning orders. but he brought detailed intelligence about enemy fleet movements and weapon systems, information that Kate's expanding militia used to plan defensive strategies. Daniel found Vorel in what had become the administrator's chosen space, a chamber filled with energy matrices where the Solvari could exist in a more natural state. The former Dominion official had stayed with them after the escape, claiming scientific interest, but Daniel suspected deeper motivations. "You broadcast your message," Vorel said. The energy being's form pulsing with colors Daniel had learned meant contemplation. "I intercepted the quantum transmission before it spread too far, but not before it reached 87 worlds." Daniel knew which message Vorel meant. 3 days ago, he had recorded humanity's story and sent it across every communication channel Raj could access. An invitation to freedom, a declaration that alternatives to Dominion rule existed, a simple statement that submission was a choice, not an inevitability. "How bad is the response?" Daniel asked. 43 spontaneous uprisings on 17 worlds, 12 species questioning Dominion authority for the first time in their recorded history. The Council is in chaos. Vorel's colors shifted toward something that might have been satisfaction. "You have destabilized 600 years of order with a single message. The Dominion doesn't know how to respond to an enemy that attacks ideas rather than territories." Amy joined them, her medical coat stained with a dozen different alien blood types. "We just received another refugee ship, 23 beings, mix of species, all fleeing Dominion crackdowns." She looked exhausted but determined. "We're up to 800 inhabitants now, Daniel. We're becoming something larger than a hiding place." "We're becoming a symbol," Vorel observed. "Proof that resistance is possible, that freedom can be chosen, dangerous concepts in an empire built on conformity." The next weeks brought both growth and challenges. Lynn's astrophysics. Team established communication relays hidden in radiation pockets throughout the system, allowing secure contact with resistance cells across 200 star systems. Raj coordinated information sharing, turning isolated rebellions into a loose network of allied groups. Kate trained integrated militia units, humans working alongside Yevrin, Karthine, Nalvari, and others, teaching them tactics designed for asymmetric warfare. "The Dominion fights with overwhelming force," she explained to her mixed-species recruits. "We fight smart, we fight dirty, we use every advantage our different biologies give us." One of Kate's students, a young Yevrin named Pollux, demonstrated remarkable aptitude for zero-gravity combat. His aquatic species' natural three-dimensional spatial reasoning made him deadly in asteroid-based engagements. "On my homeworld, the Dominion said violence was primitive," Pollux told Daniel during a break in training. "But they used violence to enforce that belief. You humans taught us that defending ourselves isn't primitive, it's necessary." Silic had become unofficial liaison between species, her Karthine diplomatic background proving invaluable as cultural misunderstandings arose. She found Daniel reviewing construction reports one evening, her mandibles clicking in her species' equivalent of concern. "The Dominion Council fractured," she reported. 4 species want negotiations with Sanctuary, 8 demand total extermination. The remaining species can't decide. This is unprecedented. The Council hasn't disagreed publicly since its formation. "What do you think will happen?" Daniel asked. "War," Silic said simply. "The hardliners won't accept that their perfect order is crumbling. They'll come for us with everything they have. To prove that resistance is futile." She paused. "But they're wrong, you've already won, because you proved that freedom is possible. Killing us won't erase that knowledge." A priority alert interrupted their conversation. Raj's voice crackled over communications. "Daniel, we have incoming, single ship, broadcasting Dominion military codes but requesting asylum should we respond." Kate's militia scrambled to defensive positions while Daniel authorized a cautious response. The ship was badly damaged, life support failing, and aboard was someone who would change everything. Commander Talvin, the same Karthine officer who had first classified humanity as a Deathworld species. The commander looked diminished, exoskeleton scarred, antenna broken. I questioned orders, Talvin explained in the medical bay while Amy treated radiation burns. The council ordered me to exterminate a colony of juveniles. Their only crime was belonging to a species that harbored resistance sympathizers. I refused. My crew supported me. The commander's voice broke. The Orvax killed them all. I barely escaped. Daniel studied the being who had once threatened to relocate humanity to habitat zones. Saw not an enemy, but someone who had discovered conscience too late to save their crew, but soon enough to save their soul. You're welcome here, Talvin. Everyone who chooses freedom is welcome. Over the following months, Sanctuary evolved from desperate refuge into thriving community. The station's population reached 1,200, representing 19 different species. Fabrication facilities produced hybrid technologies that combined human innovation with alien engineering. Lynn's team achieved breakthrough after breakthrough as different perspectives approached old problems with fresh solutions. Carlos developed weapons systems the Dominion had never encountered. Rail guns based on human kinetic principles, but powered by Nalvari energy matrices. Kate's militia grew to 300 trained fighters. A force that couldn't match Dominion numbers but could make any attack devastating for the attackers. Vorel spent hours studying the community forming around them, watching humans share meals with Yevrin, Karthine teaching human children their language, Nalvari engineers collaborating with human fabricators. You're building something the Dominion never could, the administrator told Daniel one day. Not empire through conquest, but alliance through shared values. Every being here chose to be here. That makes you stronger than any forced unity. Daniel stood in the observation deck of the completed Sanctuary station, watching ships come and go, construction continuing on defensive platforms, families from a dozen worlds making homes among the asteroids. 6 months ago, they had been fugitives fleeing extinction. Now they were the seed of something larger. They'll come for us eventually, Amy said, joining him at the window. I know, Daniel replied. But when they do, they won't find scared refugees. They'll find free people willing to defend what they've built, and every day we survive, every refugee we shelter, every resistance cell we support. We prove that their perfect order is a lie, that freedom is worth any cost. Kate appeared with latest intelligence reports. Dominion assembling a fleet, 400 ships, Orvax enforcers leading them. They're calling it Final Solution Protocol, estimated arrival in 45 days. Daniel looked at his crew, his friends, his fellow dreamers who had awakened from cryosleep to find a galaxy in chains and decided to break those chains one link at a time. Then we have 45 days to prepare, he said. We've shown the galaxy that resistance is possible. Now we show them that Deathworld species don't back down from impossible odds. The Dominion ruled for 600 years, but every empire falls eventually. Might as well be us that pushes them. The Dominion Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace like a metal storm, 400 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons powered, their shields optimized, their crews confident in the inevitability of their victory. Supreme Commander Valth led from the center. The Orvax enforcer's psychic presence radiating absolute certainty in Dominion superiority. Daniel watched the fleet arrive through Sanctuary Station sensors, felt the weight of 1,200 lives depending on decisions made in the next hours. Carlos had armed every platform. Lynn had seeded the system with false readings and traps. Kate's militia stood ready in ships designed for hit-and-run attacks. But numbers didn't lie. Conventional analysis gave them zero chance of survival. They're broadcasting, Raj announced, routing the transmission to the command center. Valth's voice carried the same psychic pressure that had nearly broken them during their escape. Sanctuary Alliance, you are commanded to surrender immediately, disperse your forces, submit to Dominion judgment. You have 1 hour to comply or face total annihilation. Daniel keyed the response channel, his voice steady despite knowing billions across the galaxy would hear this exchange. We are free beings, living on our own terms, threatening no one, defending ourselves. We will not surrender our liberty to your order. If you must destroy us, then do it. but know that you prove everything we've said about the Dominion, that your peace requires the death of choice itself." The response had been prepared weeks ago, the moment Daniel finished. Speaking, Raj initiated the second phase of their plan. Every communication relay humanity had hidden across 200 systems activated simultaneously, broadcasting Daniel's declaration. The battle, everything that happened next, would be witnessed by species across the galaxy. Valth's fleet advanced into the dead zone, their shields straining against the radiation that sanctuary inhabitants barely noticed. The Dominion had equipped their ships for this environment, but at significant cost to maneuverability and weapons efficiency. Exactly what Lynn had predicted. Kate's militia launched first, 80 small craft erupting from the asteroid field, moving through radiation pockets that would fry Dominion sensors. Human pilots pushed their ships to G-forces that would kill most species, their death-world-evolved bodies handling stress that seemed impossible. The first exchange of fire lit the system. Dominion vessels unleashed plasma barrages that vaporized 3 sanctuary fighters. But 17 Dominion ships took critical damage from kinetic weapons that punched through shields weakened by radiation interference. The ratio wasn't good enough for victory, but it wasn't the massacre Valth had expected. "They're adapting," Valth's second-in-command reported with barely concealed shock. Human vessels operating in radiation densities that should disable their systems, using the environment as a weapon. The Supreme Commander focused psychic power across the system, attempting to crush the will of Sanctuary's defenders. Humans and aliens alike felt the mental assault, the crushing demand to submit, to surrender, to accept Dominion authority as natural law. But Amy's medical teams had prepared, neurological stabilizers combined with something else, something Voral had helped develop, a technique that used human psychological resilience as a foundation for alien mental defenses. Species that had never resisted psychic control found they could fight back when anchored to human determination. "Push through it," Daniel transmitted to all Sanctuary forces. "They want you to believe resistance is futile, but we're still here, still fighting, still free. That's all the proof you need that they're lying." Valth felt something unprecedented. Confusion. The Orvax had crushed rebellions across 600 years. Psychic power had always been absolute, but these defenders, this mixed alliance of Deathworld humans and inspired aliens, they resisted, they endured, they fought harder under pressure that should have broken them. The battle raged for hours. Sanctuary lost ships, lost people. Daniel watched friends die defending an ideal, watched aliens he had known for months sacrifice themselves for freedom they had only recently discovered. Each loss carved deeper into his soul, but also hardened his resolve. Then the moment came that changed everything. Across the galaxy, on 80 worlds, billions of beings watched humans fight impossible odds, watched them refuse to yield, watched the mighty Dominion struggle to crush what should have been an insignificant rebellion, and something awakened. On 17 worlds, workers simply stopped, refused orders, walked away from their assigned tasks. On 32 stations, administrators deleted files, sabotaged systems, chose chaos over complicity. On dozens of ships, crews mutinied, demanding their captains support Sanctuary or step aside. The Dominion Council received reports of spontaneous uprisings spreading faster than they could track. 600 years of imposed stability crumbling because beings across the galaxy watched humans demonstrate that resistance was possible, that freedom could be chosen, that order maintained through fear was fragile. Valth received emergency orders, abandoned Sanctuary, returned to suppress rebellions, but the Supreme Commander refused. "If we cannot defeat these humans, we prove that Dominion power is finite, that our authority can be challenged. I will destroy them and restore order." The Orvax split the fleet, sent 250 ships back to Dominion space, kept 150 to finish Sanctuary. It was both tactically sound and profoundly symbolic. The first time a Supreme Commander had defied Council orders, the first crack in absolute obedience. Carlos detonated the seeded asteroids, cascading chain reactions that created an expanding wave of debris and radiation. Dominion ships caught in the blast suffered catastrophic damage. 40 vessels destroyed instantly, 70 more crippled, the remaining 40 scattered and damaged. Valth's command ship pursued Daniel's vessel into the densest radiation zone, both ships taking critical damage from environment and engagement. The Supreme Commander abandoned tactical thinking for personal vendetta, needed to prove that humans could be broken. "You cannot win," Valth's psychic voice hammered into Daniel's mind. "Even if you destroy me, even if you survive today, the Dominion has 2,000 ships, 10,000 worlds, you are nothing." Daniel felt his ship failing around him, felt the psychic assault trying to crush his thoughts, felt exhaustion and pain and fear, but also felt something else, felt the presence of 1,200 beings who had chosen to stand with humanity, felt the echo of billions across the galaxy who were choosing freedom because someone showed them it was possible. "You're right," Daniel transmitted back. "We're nothing, just refugees who refused to accept your order, but that's enough. Because we proved that your empire isn't inevitable, that beings can choose their own path. You can kill us, Commander, but you can't kill what we represented. Freedom is an idea, and ideas don't die when people do, they spread." Kate launched their last kinetic weapon, a rail-gun slug moving at relativistic speeds. Valth tried to stop it psychically, but doubt disrupted concentration. The weapon struck true, tearing through the Orvac's command ship. The vessel broke apart in a radiation storm. The remaining Dominion fleet retreated, 40 ships limping away from a battle they should have won easily. Sanctuary station damaged but functional, population reduced to 800 but unbroken, free. Messages flooded in over the following days. 300 resistance cells across the galaxy, species declaring independence, Dominion member worlds withdrawing from the Council. The Empire didn't collapse overnight, but its foundation had cracked beyond repair. 6 months later, Daniel stood in the rebuilt Sanctuary Station, watching ships arrive carrying refugees, rebels, dreamers. The population had grown to 5,000, representing 43 species. The Alliance controlled 30 systems, more joined weekly. Voral materialized beside him, the Administrator's energy form pulsing with colors that seemed almost joyful. The Dominion Council dissolved last week. 4 species declared independence. 8 others formed a reformed coalition that actually seeks consent from member worlds. The Empire as it existed for 600 years is gone. "Was it worth it?" Amy asked, joining them, thinking of everyone they had lost. Daniel considered the question, thought about the cost in lives, the pain endured, the future still uncertain, but also thought about beings across the galaxy who now knew they could choose, could resist, could be free. "Yes," he said finally, "because we didn't just survive, we showed the galaxy what's possible when you refuse to accept that tyranny is inevitable. The Dominion ruled for 6 centuries. Then humans awakened from cryosleep, and everything changed, not because we were stronger, but because we remembered something they had made everyone forget. That freedom is worth fighting for. That choice matters more than order. That living free for one day beats existing in chains for a lifetime." Sanctuary Station hummed with life around them, a monument to the simple truth that had toppled an empire. Deathworld species don't surrender. They adapt. They survive, they inspire, and sometimes they change the galaxy forever.